You know that moment when you're scrolling through your phone at night and you randomly think about how much money your friend makes? Or you catch yourself calculating in your head whether you're doing okay compared to people around you? Yeah, we all do that. We don't really talk about it openly, but we do it all the time. We're constantly, quietly ranking ourselves against the people in our lives. And here's the thing. We think we're ranking based on things like intelligence, personality, or how hard we work. But honestly, we're not. Deep down, there's this unspoken hierarchy, and it's almost entirely determined by one thing: how much money you make. Basically, your salary is your actual social rank in modern society, not your job title, not your credentials, not how impressive your LinkedIn looks, your salary. And I spend way too much time thinking about money, human psychology, and why people organize their entire social world around financial status without ever really admitting it to themselves. What I realized is that understanding this, really understanding it, isn't depressing, it's actually liberating. Because once you see how the system actually works, you can stop pretending it works some other way. You can stop measuring yourself against invisible standards, and you can make clearer decisions about what you actually want your financial rank to be and what you're willing to sacrifice to get there. So, over the next few minutes, I want to walk you through something pretty uncomfortable: the silent ranking system that determines your place in the world, how salary creates this invisible class structure, what that means for your relationships, your self-worth, and your actual future, and maybe, just maybe, how to think about it differently. So let's be direct about this. Money creates hierarchy, always has, always will. But what's different now is that we pretend it doesn't. We talk about meritocracy and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and measuring people by their character, which is beautiful, genuinely. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't match what's actually happening in real life. Think about any social situation you've been in recently: a dinner with coworkers, a family gathering, running into an old friend. There's this invisible scanner running in your head or in theirs, and it's basically asking, "What's your salary?" It might not be phrased that directly. It comes out as, "So what do you do?" or "How's work treating you?" But what people are really asking is, "Where do you stand in the hierarchy?" And once you know someone's salary range, even roughly, you know something deeper about them. You know what restaurants they can afford, what neighborhood they live in, whether they fly economy or business class, how often they can take vacations, whether they're stressed about rent or whether they're stressed about tax strategies. It's a single number that predicts so much about someone's daily lived experience. Here's what I mean. I have two friends. Both are smart, both work hard, both are good people. One makes about $55,000 a year, the other makes about $180,000 a year. The person making more money doesn't work 3 times harder. Honestly, they might work less hard, but their entire experience of the world is different. They can make mistakes and recover. They can take risks. They can afford therapy, personal training, good food, time off. The person making $55,000, they're probably counting their sick days and getting stressed about car repairs. They're not bad at life. The system just treats them differently. The salary decides. And this creates this weird dynamic in relationships, right? Because we're all trained to not talk about it. We're not supposed to say, "I feel lower status than you because you make more money." That's supposed to be rude. It's supposed to be shallow. So instead, we just feel it silently. We notice the subtle shifts in confidence, the way someone stops inviting you to expensive bars, the way the conversation changes when money comes up.
Okay, so why is this actually true? Why does salary create such a hard class structure? Because money is permission. That's basically what it is. Your salary is literally permission to do things. Permission to live in certain neighborhoods. Permission to date certain people. I know that sounds harsh, but dating is very much a class-based system. Permission to have opinions about certain topics without people dismissing you as just being jealous. Permission to relax. When you have money, You're allowed to be awkward, and people call it quirky. When you don't have money, you're just awkward. When you're rich, you're eccentric. When you're poor, you're unreliable. The same behavior gets interpreted completely differently depending on your salary. And here's the part that really gets to me. Salary doesn't just determine what you can do, it determines what you're supposed to do. Society has this weird implicit manual for different salary brackets, right? If you make $40,000 a year, you're supposed to be grateful for your job, work hard, save money, and respect people who make more than you. If you make $200,000 a year, you're supposed to be confident, ambitious, make bold decisions, and mentor people who make less. It's not written anywhere, but we all feel it. We feel the weight of where we're supposed to be based on our paycheck. And money creates this self-perpetuating thing where it compounds your social position. Someone making $150,000 a year can go to networking events in nice clothes. They're not stressed about the cost. They can take unpaid internships or side projects that build their brand. They can afford to live in central areas where there are more opportunities. They can afford a therapist to work through their issues instead of just living with them. They can afford to take risks because they have a cushion. Someone making $40,000 a year doesn't have that cushion. Every decision is high stakes. Should I go to this networking event? Well, that's $50 I don't have to spend on groceries. It's exhausting. It's not that they're less ambitious or less smart. They just have fewer resources to build with. This is where it gets really uncomfortable, because salary doesn't just determine your class in society, it determines your class within your relationships. I know a couple, let's call them Alex and Jordan. They've been together 5 years. They love each other, but there's this tension that's always there, simmering quietly. Alex makes about $70,000 a year, Jordan makes about $140,000, and even though they don't talk about it directly, it affects everything. Who gets to make decisions about where to live? Well, Jordan can afford nicer places. Who gets listened to about money? Instinctively, Jordan. Who gets to have the smaller job or take more time off parenting? Usually Alex, because their income matters less. And here's the thing, neither of them is being intentionally awful about this. It's just how it works. Money is power, and salary creates a power dynamic that's almost impossible to escape, even in the relationships we love most. Or think about friendships. You have a friend who makes way more than you, and suddenly you can't go to their birthday dinner because it's at an expensive restaurant. You can't take that trip they're planning. You're not excluded exactly. They'd probably say, "Oh, don't worry about it, we can go somewhere cheaper." But now you feel like a burden. You feel like you're dragging down the group. The salary difference didn't change how much you like each other, but it changed the dynamic. It made you feel lower, smaller. I think we really underestimate how much this affects us. We treat salary like it's just a number that determines what you can afford, but it's so much deeper. It's about dignity. It's about feeling like you belong. It's about having agency in your own life.
All right, so let's talk about the brackets, because I think it helps to be concrete about this. There's basically a floor below which you're in survival mode. That's roughly the bottom 20 percentile of earners. You're making maybe $25,000 to $35,000 a year. Most of your income goes to rent, food, transportation. You're not thinking about investing or taking career risks. You're thinking about not falling behind. This is where genuine financial stress lives. It's not anxiety about whether you can afford a vacation. It's wondering if you can afford to get sick. Then there's the middle class floor, maybe $45,000 to $65,000. You're comfortable. You have a little breathing room. You can think about your career beyond just, will this pay my bills? You might even be able to save a little. But you're not relaxed. You're still one medical emergency away from real trouble. You're still thinking about your job a lot. Then you hit what I call the affluent comfort zone, $80,000 to $150,000. This is where things genuinely change. You can afford mistakes. You can afford therapy. You can afford to make decisions based on what you want, not just what you need.
You feel secure. You're not checking your bank account before you go grocery shopping. This is where most high-income professionals live, and it's genuinely different from what's below it. Above that, you're in the realm where money stops being about comfort and starts being about power. $200,000 and above. At this level, you're not thinking about money the same way anymore. You're thinking about investments, tax strategy, building wealth. Your problems aren't about whether you have enough. They're about what to do with what you have. And here's what's interesting. The difference in quality of life between someone making $50,000 and $100,000 is enormous. But the difference between $100,000 and $200,000 feels less dramatic, right? Because once you hit that middle upper bracket, you've solved most of the actual survival problems. The money that comes after that is about options and security and building a legacy. It's a different game. But here's what people don't really talk about: the psychological weight of knowing your rank, of knowing exactly where you stand financially and what that means. If your salary puts you in the lower brackets, there's this constant low-level stress. It's not always front of mind, but it's there. It colors decisions. It makes you less likely to take risks, even when taking risks could improve your situation, because you can't afford to fail. So you play it safe. And playing safe when you're lower on the ladder means you stay lower. If your salary is in the comfortable middle, there's often this weird imposter syndrome. You feel like you should be further along. You see people making more and think, they're not smarter than me. Why are they making $200,000? And sometimes the answer is just luck, or timing, or starting with more privilege. But that doesn't feel good, so you feel resentful, or inadequate, or both. And if you're making really good money, well, there's a different kind of weight. There's pressure to justify it, to be worth it, to keep climbing. There's the fear of losing it. There's the guilt about making more than people around you. There's the weirdness of now having a different class status than the people you grew up with. Your old friends still make $60,000, and you're making $250,000. That changes things. The psychological burden of knowing your rank is real, and I think what makes it worse is that we're not supposed to talk about it. We're supposed to pretend that we don't care, or that we don't notice, or that it doesn't affect our self-worth. But it does. It absolutely does.
Here's what I think we actually need to talk about, though. Once you understand that salary creates class, that it determines your options, your security, your social position, the question becomes, what do you do with that information? And I think the answer is learning how to increase your salary. Not in a grinding, hustle culture kind of way, but in a real, intentional way. Because here's what's true. Your salary is mostly determined by how much value you create for someone else who can afford to pay for it. That's it. That's the formula. It's not determined by how hard you work, or how much you deserve it, or how smart you are. It's determined by your ability to create value in a market that can compensate you for it. And the weird part? You don't even need to be that much better at your job to make significantly more money. You might need to be 20% better, or you might just need to learn how to negotiate better, or you might just need to change jobs instead of waiting for raises at the same place. But a lot of people don't do this. They stay in the same job, getting small raises, accepting the rank they were assigned years ago. And the years go by, and the salary gap between them and people who switched jobs or negotiated harder just grows and grows. I'm not saying money is everything. I'm not saying you should sacrifice your well-being to make $300,000. But I am saying understand the system. Understand that your salary is your actual class status. And if you're unhappy with that class status, the most direct way to change it is to increase your ability to create value in the marketplace. Here's something that took me way too long to understand. Knowing all of this is actually a privilege in itself, because some people grow up in wealth and they just absorb the rules without ever having to think about them. They know intuitively how the system works because they've always been inside it. But a lot of people, maybe you, have to figure this out the hard way. You have to watch people around you move up while you stay still. You have to feel the class shifts in relationships. You have to feel the weight of not having options. But here's what I've noticed. People who see the system clearly often do better than people who don't. Because once you see it, you can play it intentionally. You're not just accepting your rank, you're choosing it, or you're working to change it. And that's actually powerful. So let me bring this back to something simple. Salary creates class. It's not a moral statement, it's just how the system works. Your income determines your options, your security, your social position, and honestly, a lot of your daily stress level. But understanding this, really seeing it clearly, changes how you think about your own life. You stop feeling vaguely ashamed of wanting to make more money because you understand that more money means more actual freedom. You stop pretending that salary doesn't matter in relationships because acknowledging it is the first step to managing it. You stop accepting your current rank as fixed and immutable. What I hope you take from this is not anxiety about where you stand, it's clarity. It's a clear-eyed understanding that if you're unhappy with your current position, your salary is one of the most direct levers you can pull to change it. Not the only lever, but maybe the most powerful one. And here's the thing, you don't have to optimize for maximum income. You might decide that you'd rather make $60,000 and have a job with flexibility and meaning than make $150,000 and be miserable. That's a completely valid choice, but make it consciously. Know what you're choosing. Know what the trade-off is. Because the reality is, you're already in this system. Your salary is already creating your rank, whether you think about it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not. The people around you are already silently noticing it, calculating their relationship to you based on it. So you might as well be intentional about it. Figure out what class status you actually want. Not what you think you should want, not what sounds impressive, but what actually makes you feel secure, respected, and free. And then ask yourself, what would it take to get there? Is it a new job? Learning new skills? Moving somewhere else? Negotiating better? Just deciding you're okay where you are? Whatever the answer is, at least you'll know you're not just accepting some invisible rank that was handed to you. You'll know you're choosing it. And honestly, that's a lot more powerful than most people ever get to feel about their position in the world.